Hello and welcome back to my channel, Nutrition con Sabor. I'm Krista, I'm a Latina dietitian, and I'm here to talk about Latin American food, nutrition, and food history. My goal with all of my work is to help you embrace your cultural foods and meet your health goals without disconnecting from our food culture. In today's video, we'll be discussing one of the biggest misconceptions that my clients have about Mexican food, that it's unhealthy and that it's standing in the way of their health goals. So by the end of today's video, you'll understand how nourishing Mexican food is and the secret to building a nutritious diet with Mexican food. Spoiler alert, it's nothing fancy or mysterious. So we'll get started in a second, but before we do, I wanted to ask you, if you would like to see more episodes about Latino foods and nutrition, please remember to like this episode and subscribe. That support will help me to continue to grow and produce more episodes for you. Okay, so let's dive in. So, even before I became a dietitian, I was constantly hearing from other people in my community, other Latinos, that they thought the foods from our culture were unhealthy. This came up for me a lot because I was interested in food and nutrition and I was studying it in school. So, people would often tell me that would tell me what they thought about food and nutrition. And it happened over and over again that someone would say something like, oh, well, our food is not healthy. And I had kind of fallen into that too when I was first learning about nutrition. I was managing my own health conditions, and all of the information on how to manage that condition said nothing about Latin American food. So if I was trying to follow the advice that was laid out before me, I just unintentionally stopped eating all of the food I had grown up eating because I was trying to follow what people who supposedly knew a lot about this topic were telling me to do. But here's the thing, and this is the whole reason I became a dietitian and started my business. The reason that following that nutrition advice led me away from my cultural foods is not because Latin American food is inherently unhealthy. It's just because the people producing nutrition education don't have experience with Latin American food. The more I studied nutrition, the more I realized that the foods I had grown up with had always been nutritious. So today I'm going to talk about Mexican food in particular. Before we talk about what makes Mexican food healthy, let's take a really brief look at what it is. So first, I want to point out that Mexican food relies on staple foods like corn, beans, peppers, tomato, and squash. These ingredients have nourished Mexican people for generations, and they've been a staple ingredient in Mexican cuisine for thousands of years. Keep in mind, though, that Mexican food is incredibly diverse, with regional variations. So northern Mexico may favor wheat flour and red meat, while on coastal regions of Mexico, you may see more seafood. And then you have the Yucatan and southern Mexico have a completely different food culture as well. But what ties all of these regions together are these common staple ingredients of corn, beans, and certain fruits and vegetables. So is Mexican food healthy? Well, if you've been following along this far, you probably already know the answer is yes, but let's talk about why. Let's take it back to those fundamental staple ingredients we just talked about. First, we have corn. Corn is a whole grain, and corn tortillas have additional health benefits that are different from fresh corn too. That's a topic for an entirely separate episode. Mexican food has plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables like tomato, squash, yes, zucchini is a squash, avocado, onion, garlic, nopales, and even more. When it comes to protein sources, Mexican food is really well set up to emphasize lean, plant-based proteins. If this is coming as a surprise to you, I want you to think about one of the staple foods in Mexican food, beans. You see, those beans are also a really good source of fiber. So when it comes to the basic foundations of a healthy diet, plenty of plant foods, plenty of fiber, wide variety of fruits and vegetables, Mexican food checks off all of those boxes. So we're starting to see how we have the foundations of a very healthy diet. And there is new data coming out that backs me up here. In fact, emerging research suggests that a traditional Mexican diet is associated with positive health outcomes. It may contribute to better cholesterol levels, reduced inflammation, improved insulin sensitivity, and a lower risk of certain health conditions. And I will include some citations for all of that information in the description. But If you decided to tune into this episode, you may be feeling a little bit confused. You may be thinking, why has everyone always told me that Mexican food is unhealthy? Or maybe you're thinking, why do Mexican American people face poorer health outcomes if it's not because of the food? Or maybe you're even thinking, well, yes, those are healthy foods that you named, but the Mexican food that I eat looks a lot different from that. So, of course, like any cuisine, Mexican food has its nutritional challenges. In recent years, there's been an increase in sugar, sodium, and saturated fats in Mexican food. But I really, really want to emphasize to you that these are changes that have been happening in the last few decades that are moving the modern Mexican diet away from that traditional Mexican diet that we see has those health benefits. I also want to point out that those foods and nutrients I pointed out that are increasing, they're not inherently bad at the individual level. I am not implying in any way that you should never eat them. We're talking about global societal trends with food intake. So just overall, over time, we're seeing more sugar, more saturated fat, less fiber, less plant foods. It's also really important to me that you understand this is not unique to Mexican food. This is a trend happening worldwide. This is a predictable shift that nutrition researchers have found happens to a society's food system as their economy changes. So, as Mexico's economy is shifting, it's following the same pattern of all the other countries whose economies have followed a similar pattern in the past. There are also a lot of social economic factors that disproportionately affect Latina people that play a role in how we make food choices. Think about, what food people have access to in their neighborhoods or what type of hours people have to work and how that affects their ability to prepare food for themselves. This is a super surface level overview of a really complex public health discussion. If you all are interested in learning more about these kind of social determinants of health, is what we call them, and how they interact with Latina nutrition, please let me know. I can make a full episode or really more like several full episodes dedicated to that topic alone. So now we understand that traditional Mexican food is healthy. But let's talk a little bit about what you can do, right? So, what are the secrets to healthy Mexican food? So, this first one should not be a surprise if you've been with me this whole episode. The first secret to healthy Mexican food is that it's already pretty healthy and you may not have to do a whole lot. You don't need an influencer to show you a low carb enchilada recipe or anything like that. Our traditional foods have been nourishing us for centuries or even millennia, and they are going to continue to do so. You can eat your food, and a lot of times you can eat it in the way that you grew up eating it, and it will probably have some health benefits to it. But if for whatever reason, maybe you have a medical condition that has special needs, maybe you feel like your diet isn't really matching up with that traditional Mexican diet that I talked about earlier in this episode, if for whatever reason you feel like you still want to take the Mexican food that you eat and make it a little bit healthier, I'll let you in on the second secret. The second secret to healthy Mexican food is to look for the undercover vegetables. Yes, a lot of us think that Mexican food doesn't have very many vegetables, but I would encourage you to remember that a lot of the garnishes, sauces, and extra things that we add to Mexican food are vegetables. Think salsa. Think radish slices. Think shredded cabbage, diced onion, all of that. And I know I get this reaction so much, it may not seem like it's very much. You may be thinking, Krista, I just put a little sprinkle of that on my food. Surely that doesn't make a difference. But if you have 3 to 4 different vegetable garnishes on your plate, maybe you do cabbage, onion, and salsa. And maybe, or let's do 4 cabbage, onion, salsa, and radish slices. Okay. And let's say you have 2 tablespoons of each. That's a half cup of vegetables. And that's a really good starting point. Of course, this isn't the only nutrition change you make or that you can make. We can always talk about protein sources, which fiber sources you're eating, or how many, which fat sources you're eating, a whole lot more. But that right there is a really good starting place. If you feel like you need some more ideas to get you started embracing Mexican food while working on your nutrition at the same time, I have some cool resources I would love for you to check out. First, you can always read my blog. I try to post about weekly on a new topic every week. And I also have a free 5-day Latino meal planning tool with a checklist and food group list to help you start planning. So if you're wondering, okay, I need a vegetable at my meal, what are some Latino vegetables I can include? Or if you're wondering, let's say you're eating plantains and you're like, I don't know if this is a carb or a vegetable, where does it fall? You need this resource. This will help you start planning balanced meals that include Latin American heritage foods. So the link will be in the description to this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe for more content. Remember, your heritage foods are nourishing and always have been. I'll see you next time.